Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kim Schmidt. I'm the executive editor of Farm Equipment Magazine. Welcome to our latest webinar in conjunction with Warranty Consulting Services. Today's presenter is Devin McGuinn, Development and Compliance Director with Warranty Consulting Services. With more than a decade of experience in the heavy equipment warranty industry, Devin specializes in working with warranty data analytics, dealer warranty training, and securing audit compliance against warranty processes. All right, with that, we are ready to get started. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and you can take it away, Devin.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. So first of which, thanks everybody for making time today to go over a topic that is kind of important, but a lot of people don't either think about. Whenever it comes to warranty specifically, because that is, of course, my background. As was mentioned, I have almost 2 decades worth of warranty specific experience. And as such, there's a lot of information that is provided for warranty repairs and even customer repairs as well that basically just identifies that broke fix scenario. So I'm going to go through and highlight and identify some of the important information and documentation that's necessary for situations like this. So please, as Kim mentioned, if there's any questions, concerns, or anything like that, they will be addressed at the end. But feel free to use that Q&A function and reach out and ask any questions or concerns that you might have that you wish for me to address as I go through. All right, so the first thing that I want to touch on is the thing that, believe it or not, I always talk about regardless of what I'm presenting or what I'm talking about. And that is simply, what is warranty? Now, the reason why I bring this up is because everybody has their own idea of what warranty is. You have your own idea. I have my own idea. Mother, brother, everybody has their own idea of what warranty is. Anything from your phone to your automotive industry to the industry that we're in as well. So if anybody's ever read any of the terms and conditions that are ever outlined and made available by any manufacturer, any OEM, you can see that it's pages and pages and pages of things that look like they were written by a lawyer. Now, the reason for that is typically the legal department is involved whenever it comes to writing these terms and conditions, whether it's in a warranty user's manual, policy and procedure guides, dealer operating guides, so on and so forth. But boiled down, what is warranty? Warranty is always against that defect of material and or workmanship. So first of which, about 97% of the repairs that are completed that are eligible for warranty fall within that defect of material. That's pretty straightforward. A part or component fails within the time period of warranty, and as such is eligible to be filed as a warranty claim. Again, that's the majority of the repairs that you'll ever see, but a lot of people do not actually think of defect of workmanship. Defect of workmanship is something that is identified whenever it comes to these terms, regardless of who the manufacturer is. And defect of workmanship is a situation in which you have a failure, you have a repair that is conducted within the warranty parameters, but there is not actually a failed part or component. So a couple examples here. Let's say that you get a brand new piece of equipment straight from the manufacturer, straight from the factory, comes off the truck. As you do your arrival inspection or your pre-delivery inspection, you go over the machine and you identify that, hey, there is a leak of some sort. Whether you notice that the hydraulic line was not torqued to spec, or even if it's a situation where the hoses are routed incorrectly, out to in to out, so on and so forth. So in a situation like that, the hoses have not failed. The pumps, the valves, motors, there isn't any failure against any of the parts and components, but obviously a repair needs to be conducted. It's not at fault of the customer. They haven't even seen the piece of equipment yet. It's not at fault of you at a dealership, simply because you just received that piece of equipment. The fault, if you want to say it that way, goes back to the manufacturer, whether it's a design concern or if it's a situation in which it was assembled incorrectly from the factory. So that's the first example on which there may be a defect of workmanship. The other example that I give whenever I talk about defect of workmanship is, believe it or not, the equipment out there is evolving at a very rapid pace. Everything has some form of bells and whistles and some form of computer on it. As such, software is becoming a big thing. You may have a situation where the software ends up being corrupted. As such, you need to either reflash that ECU, reprogram it, clear it off, so on and so forth. But the ECU, the module itself, has not failed. The software itself ended up being corrupted. So that is another situation or an instance where defective workmanship may come into play. Obviously, a repair needed to be completed because the machine isn't operating correctly due to that software being corrupted. As such, that is a defect of workmanship. Again, whether it's design or assembly related, just be aware that at a boiled down level, this is what warranty is: defective material and or workmanship. So as simple as that sounds and as boiled down as I feel like I just made it, there are still situations in which people believe that, hey, this piece of equipment was just sold last week or 2 weeks ago, so it's really new. The paint's still nice and shiny, and there's a failure and a repair that needs to be conducted. Well, the failure was due to the customer running that piece of equipment either into a ditch or wrapping it around a tree. Again, do understand that a repair does need to be conducted. Now, granted, this is a rather excessive example, but it's an example nonetheless of which where warranty does not come into play, even though the machine or piece of equipment itself is under a warranty timeframe. So please, as I go through this, there is some stuff specifically that I'm going to talk about warranty and some general information as well, but I just want to make it perfectly clear from the get-go, as that way we all have a baseline of what warranty is. All right, I know there's several on the call that know me. For those that don't, fun fact, Devin is a visual learner. As such, I do like to have a little bit of visualization whenever it comes to my slides and my presentations. So I want to talk about the evolution of the industry. So here on the screen, on the left-hand side, you see a schematics or a diagram of a Tier 2 engine. For those playing at home, Tier 2 engines have not been in production for quite some time in the North America market. So we have this schematics or diagram, and we're looking at just the engine sensors associated with this Tier 2 engine. All right, that's fresh in everybody's mind. If we fast forward and we look at basically the same type of schematics or diagram, but for a Tier 4 engine, it's not rocket science. Obviously, one of these things is not like the other. So I give this as a visual example simply because I do understand. I've worked with many technicians over the years. I've talked to many people about warranty, about failures, about equipment. And I can tell you that, yes, I do understand that back in the day, all you needed was that broke fix. I mean, I've talked to many technicians. Well, it broke. I fixed it. Warranty should pay for it. I don't understand what the big deal is. I did come in kind of on the tail end of whenever that was the gravy train, if you will, on how warranty was handled. But promise me, or I promise you, whenever it comes to warranty nowadays, regardless of who the manufacturer is, they're starting to require more and more information, not just about what to pay and what not to pay, but even at a technical level. So whenever it comes to the OEMs and manufacturers, a lot of people don't realize whenever it comes to specifically warranty claims, there are many other stakeholders that are actually looking at the information associated with a warranty claim, whether it's early field failure, parts engineering, product planning, so on and so forth. They're looking at these warranty claims not necessarily for the monetary amounts. There is a separate team that typically looks at that exclusively. But those other stakeholders are looking at these claims to see exactly what is happening out in the market. They have a product out in the market. They want to be able to see that if there is a failure, what the failure rate is, what the conditions are, and basically how to resolve any quality concerns sooner than later. Now, I do understand that some manufacturers have avenues in which you can reach out and identify, failures and ask for support, technical support cases, so on and so forth. But as we all know, whenever it comes to failures, if it's a straightforward failure, you just do the repair and you move forward. So they may not get that communication as far as seeing what that failure rate is out in the field and exactly what those failures incur. So they look at this warranty information because even though a dealership may not contact the OEM or manufacturer as far as specifically what's going on with a specific machine or product line, if there's a failure within warranty, obviously a warranty claim is going to be filed. So they are definitely exercising and utilizing these warranty claims to see what's going on and get as much technical information as possible. Also, whenever it comes to these OEMs and manufacturers, a lot of them are starting to say that they are more and more of a technology company. So for them, information is becoming more and more of a king status than anything else. But a lot of people look at warranty and they look at the information that's necessary just for a warranty claim to be filed, and they look at just the bare minimum. One thing that I do really want to stress is that within these terms and conditions, within those warranty terms and conditions and operating guides and so on and so forth, there are typically little blurbs that say that they can request information at any time. So even though you may be feeling like you're good because you're providing the bare bones mandatory information, those manufacturers still do reserve that right to request additional information, documentation, and clarification. So I just wanted to kind of give a brief overview as far as what the OEM's stances are whenever it comes to information. And I do say this because prior to joining WCS, I did work for a manufacturer and I did see this information and how it was utilized. But one of the first main things I want to talk about, remarks. So whenever a repair is conducted, a technician typically writes up a work order. Now, I like to consider this story time, and every manufacturer is a little bit different as far as how they want this information provided. But for the most part, everybody does the CCCs, complaint, cause, and correction. So this is very important whenever it comes to information that's being provided by the technician, because they're the ones actually performing the repair. They're the ones actually hands-on. They're able to see exactly what's going on, what actions are necessary, and of course, they're talking with the customer, everything along those lines. So for them, it is very important that they are providing a clear story. That way, first of which, you're able to justify that it is eligible for warranty, that you're able to justify everything associated with the repair itself. OEMs may tell you, they may not tell you, but whenever it comes to warranty claims, they do like to scrutinize one thing in particular. Typically, material, it's costed out at what it's costed out at. So there's not really much discrepancy or push there, but they do really like to scrutinize labor. So whenever it comes to labor, they need more than that broke fix scenario. Because again, I do understand that in the past, that's all you had to say, that there was a problem and that you fixed the problem, but they want more and more information. So within the 3 C's, I'm just going to touch briefly on 2 of the different aspects, the first of which being the cause. So this is not a brag by any means. So anybody on the call that thinks that I'm bragging, I promise you it is not. But I've read a ton of work orders and service orders, and I can tell you that whenever it comes to the cause aspect of the write-ups, they're usually lacking. And again, this is just a blanket statement. I'm not trying to call anybody out in particular, but whenever it comes to the cause, usually, or I shouldn't say usually, but there are many instances where it just identifies a part number or a part description, both of which are good information. But from a manufacturer and an OEM standpoint, they want actually more and more information. They want to know specifically what caused that failure and to what extent that failure caused. So one of the examples that I give here is a situation where you have a repair where you replace the complete engine assembly. Straightforward, no big deal. The cause shouldn't really say engine failed. Now, the reason why I bring this up as an example is even though it may make sense to you, to the technician, whoever completed the repair, it's not fully justifying that defective material and or workmanship, because that's what the cause really needs to drive home, that it is eligible for warranty. So you replace the complete engine assembly, that's great. But the cause, what was the specific cause, as detailed as possible? Was there a drop cylinder liner, camshaft failure? Did a piston blow up and now there's a hole in the side of the block? It could be a number of many things. But in the example of an engine, typically it's a part or component that's actually associated with the engine that failed, causing a situation in which the complete engine assembly needs to be replaced. So again, you may be thinking to yourself, what's the big deal? It broke, I fixed it. And again, that's something that I want people to start moving away from, because I do understand in the past it was a thing, but going forward with the manufacturers and OEMs, they want more and more information. So if it was a camshaft failure, identify that it was a camshaft failure. If there was a failure and it had other victim parts, or hydraulic failures is probably the best example there, where you may have a pump or a motor that failed internally and it sent debris throughout the entire hydraulic system. As such, if you just say that pump or motor failed internally, at that point, the manufacturer will have additional questions if you start replacing additional parts, components, and have excessive labor beyond just that broke fix scenario. So again, whenever it comes to cause, I promise you, it's not a situation where I would ever want to be a stickler, but those other stakeholders in particular want that additional information as far as the specifics of the cause, but the cause at bare minimums should identify and secure that there was a defect of that material and or workmanship. If not, then at that point, it's really hard to justify that repair would be eligible for warranty. Because again, the boiled down of what warranty is that defective material and or workmanship. The next portion I like to talk about is the correction. So this is kind of viewed as the meat and potatoes of the write-up. Obviously, you try to identify the main actions taken to complete the repair. And I do like to stress main actions taken to complete the repair. And the reason for this is sometimes people view that as, oh, he wants all the details possible. I removed this bolt, I removed this washer. No. If you have a technician that provides that level of detail, that is excellent. But in many situations, that's unnecessary. The main actions is typically what's necessary whenever it comes to corrections. But again, whenever it comes to warranty claims, one of the main things that is scrutinized is that labor. So the correction is where you're going to justify and identify that, yes, the labor associated with this repair is equal to the information that is being provided as far as the corrective actions. But typically, there are two things that are missed whenever I look at work orders and the correction. First of which is diagnostics and troubleshooting. There are situations in which troubleshooting diagnostic measures are necessary. By all means, please make sure that you're identifying and noting those down. Not just what actions were taken, but also the results as well. If you have a situation where you needed to do pressure testing or compression testing, make sure that you actually provide the results as well. Because again, this is helping to justify the labor associated with that repair. But again, often the diagnostic measures and the results are missing on work orders. Also, this is a big one for me, repair complications. So you may have a technician that is absolutely seasoned. He could complete any repair blindfolded, which is excellent. And I'm sure that there's many on the call that wish that they had a fleet of those type of mechanics and technicians. But there are many situations in which a repair is completed and you just get that I fixed it. Prime example here, whenever it comes to complications, turbocharging replacing. Now, this is kind of my go-to example. So turbocharger, 4 bolts on and off, right? It's no big deal. It's easy. It takes no time at all. Well, it might be easy to remove those 4 bolts, against a brand new piece of equipment. But any piece of equipment that's been out there working for any period of time, I'm sure a lot on the call will be able to testify to this. Those 4 bolts aren't that easy to get off at a certain point. You may have to heat up those 4 bolts. You may have to drill and tap out those 4 bolts. Again, all of which takes time. So if you have a repair in a situation where the technician says, yep, the turbo failed and I replaced the turbo, many manufacturers have what are called time guides or standard repair times. And these are situations in which they identify a specific or a finite amount of time that's necessary to complete specific actions of a repair. So another fun thing about Devin, he likes to use easy math. So let's say that the technician has 4 hours into this turbo replacing. Again, I'm just using easy math. But let's say that manufacturer or whoever that repair was against, they only allot 2 hours for that turbocharging replacing based on their time guide or their standard repair time. So at that point, what do you do? because the technician, all he said was that he replaced the turbocharger. He has 4 hours into that repair. But the manufacturer will only reimburse 2 hours of that 4 hours simply because they're reimbursing exactly what he said he did. So in this situation, were there complications? Yes, I had to drill and tap those 4 bolts. Yes, I had to do this form of diagnostics, pressure testing, testing, troubleshooting, anything of that nature to help justify the actions not only that were taken, but the labor associated with that repair. There are so many situations in which, and again, I'm not calling out any technician or anything like that, but there are too many situations in which a technician, in their mind, they know exactly what they're doing. But at the end of the day, whenever it comes to the write-up, it's lacking as far as the information, because in their mind, well, everybody knows that you need to do this, this, and this to complete the repair. Which I may know, you may know that yes, you need to do this, this, and this. But whenever it comes to reimbursement from the manufacturer, if you do not give specifics, then at that point, again, they love to scrutinize that labor. They will say no thank you to that additional 2 hours in this example. So again, whenever it comes to the write-up, whether you have that William Shakespeare of a technician that writes beautiful paragraph after paragraph, spelling perfect, punctuation perfect, or if you have a technician that just likes to do bullet points, as long as that relevant information is in there, especially at the detailed level and securing any diagnostic measures and any complications that arose during the repair, at that point, you're setting yourself up for success whenever it comes to these warranty claims and the reimbursement, specifically on the labor. The next thing I want to talk about, fault code error codes. So again, I do understand in the past, everything was straight pipes, everything was easy to work on, but the machinery, the equipment, it's evolving at a very rapid pace, as I reference in my visual, if you will. As such, everything has some computer on it now. Fault code error codes is something that we're not going to be able to shake. It's because, again, you may not know what these fault code error codes are. I may not even know what these fault code error codes are. But those other stakeholders at the manufacturer, at the OEM, to them, these fault code error codes are absolute gold. So please make sure that you are actually noting the actual code at a code level, not a description of what the code was, of anything that is present on that piece of equipment at time of repair. Now, one thing that I do want to stress here is I do highly recommend that if you're working on a product line that has the capability or capacity to do a data download or a matrice reading or something of the sort, to definitely make sure that that is being completed. Now, I'm guilty of this as well. You may have a technician that's trying their best. All right, they're writing down those fault code error codes. They feel like everything's great, but it's very easy to do a typo. It's very easy to have dyslexia hit out of nowhere. Again, I'm guilty of all of this as well. To help alleviate all that and create a safe net, if you can have a data download or a matrice reading or, again, something of the sort pulled, that's great. Because even if the fault code error code is written down incorrectly by the technician, you still have that safety net as far as what those fault code error codes actually were. Also, some manufacturers actually mandate these fault code error codes at a data download or matrice reading level. That's not across the board as of yet, but more and more manufacturers are starting to go down that avenue. So again, fault code error codes, it is something that we're not going to shake, but please make sure that you are properly securing them. That way, whenever it comes to specifically warranty, you're able to provide that information upfront first time around, because the last thing you want is a delay in that specific claim or even a outright denial or rejection of that claim simply because these fault code error codes are not being provided. Another thing that I want to touch on, fuel and oil samples. So every manufacturer is a little bit different whenever it comes to fuel and oil samples. Some of them require it for specific failures and repairs. Others will just, again, request it. But additionally, sometimes, depending on the manufacturer, they may reimburse the sample kits. They may not. But for those that don't, typically they view it as a quote unquote cost of business. So please make sure that if there is a situation where a fuel or oil sample is either needed or will help, at minimum help, with the justification of the actions taken for the repair, make sure that not only are they being performed and completed, but a copy of those sample and reports be made available as well. Again, every manufacturer is a little bit different as far as how they mandate this and how they scope this. But if you do have a program or a process in which you are continually doing fuel and oil samples, make sure that you do have that information available for whenever the claim is filed. You can provide the best case and situation going forward. That way you're not waiting for them to ask. If you have something actually showing that there was contaminants throughout the whole system, definitely make sure that that's made available. Because even though you may have it in the write-up and in the text, providing additional detail, additional information, and documentation helps remove any doubt by the manufacturer as far as, well, I understand what they're saying, but I'm just not 100% buying it. So again, fuel and oil samples, everybody's a little bit different as far as how they handle it. But please, if you do perform a fuel or oil sample report for either specific repair or just in general, make sure that that information is available for warranty as well. The next topic, I'll be perfectly honest, is a topic that I could talk about for a decent amount of time. But with that being said, we do have a finite amount of time during this call, so I won't, or at least I'll attempt not to ramble, but pictures. Devin's a big fan of pictures. I love pictures. And the reason for that is, no, I'm not a big Instagram guy or social media or anything like that, but I have seen so many claims actually saved simply by pictures being taken. So first of which, I do want to preface that photos are not mandated across the board by every manufacturer, but more and more manufacturers are at minimum starting to request photos, whether it's photos of the failure itself, wide angle, close-up angle, picture of the failed part or component outside the machine, or even a situation where they want photos of the repair actually being completed. Photos are being requested more and more often. And talking to a decent amount of the manufacturers over the past couple of years, I can tell you that within, I would say, probably two-ish years, almost every manufacturer will start to mandate photos whenever it comes to any warranty claim. But one thing that I stress about photos, long gone are the days in which you had to wait for film to be developed, wait for that Polaroid to dry. Photos cost nothing nowadays, and it takes mere moments. I have a very hard time thinking of a reason or a situation where a technician at least doesn't have the avenue to take pictures whenever it comes to repairs. Because again, pictures say, what is it, 1,000 words, 1,000,000 words, who really cares? But the last thing you want is a situation where everything makes sense. You have the technician write up that beautiful William Shakespeare of a write-up. Everything makes sense. Everything T crossed, everything's beautiful. But whenever it reaches the manufacturer, whoever's evaluating or adjudicating that claim looks at it, they may scratch their head. I see what they're saying, but I'm not 100% buying it. If you have photo proof of it, there's no real argument that can be had at that point. So pictures, pictures, pictures. Also, we were talking about those fault code error codes. If you have a piece of equipment that does not have the capability or capacity to do that data download or matrice reading or something of the sort, but you see that there are error codes, fault codes on the IEC, the instrument cluster or dash, or whenever you hook up to it, you're able to pull up and see what those fault code error codes are. It costs nothing to take a picture of that because, again, the technician might do their best on writing down what that fault code error code is, but if you have a picture of it, that is an excellent safety net. And I cannot stress this enough. Photos cost nothing nowadays. So for those on the call, I hope that your technicians do have an avenue to use a camera to get photos. If not, definitely look into that avenue to give them the possibility of basically setting them up for success. But also, even if they have that avenue and that capability, I would definitely stress the importance of taking photos, because whether it's a $50 claim or a $50,000 claim, It doesn't matter. If you have photos showing what's going on, and that's that teeter point as far as the claim either being adjusted heavily or rejected or approved, why would you not want that pictures? Because again, pictures cost nothing, takes no time, pictures. The next item that I want to talk about that, to be honest, I feel should be captured more often than what I'm seeing out in the industry and in the market, component serial numbers. So again, I do want to preface and start by component serial numbers are not mandated by all manufacturers, but more and more manufacturers are starting to, at minimum, request these component serial numbers. So whenever it comes to these component serial numbers, for the most part, it typically likes to float around the main components or the major components. So that's such as your engine, transmission, drop box, torque converters, complete axle assemblies, planetaries, basically anything that has a decent dollar sign assigned to it. So whenever it comes to these situations, and again, I do want to lean on something that I said towards the beginning. Manufacturers can request any information at any time. So you may have a manufacturer in which you did a repair, you replaced that complete engine assembly. Perfect, great. They don't mandate that you provide the old and new serial number, but they do still have the potential to request any information at any point. So you replace the engine, no big deal. File the claim comes back, hey, can you please provide the old and new serial number against that engine? So the old engine, that shouldn't really be a problem. That engine should be in your warranty staging area, so you're able to go over, get the serial numbers on that. No big deal, no problem. But what about the new engine that was installed? That repair has already been completed. You released it back to the customer. It's probably back out in operations and doing work. What do? Do you send a technician out to that piece of equipment just to pop the hood to get some numbers right quick? Or do you have that awkward phone call with the customer? Hey, Mr. Customer, you mind popping that hood right quick and getting some numbers for me? And both of which are not ideal. But whenever it comes to component serial numbers, I like to lean on the photos once again. Take a picture of anything that has a number on it that's being replaced on the machine. Because believe it or not, pictures cost nothing, as I've mentioned. But you don't want a situation in which that engine claim ends up being denied or adjusted simply because the old and new serial numbers are not being provided. If the manufacturer says, I need these numbers, I want these numbers, whether it's by the warranty team or a different one of those other stakeholders at the manufacturer OEM, at that point, you're kind of handcuffed. You need to provide that information. Component serial numbers is something that is often missed whenever it comes to information that's being secured. So please make sure that your technicians are writing down those component serial numbers, both old and new. Another reason why I like the picture idea for component serial numbers is you may have a situation that part of component has an ID tag on it, and it has a couple different lines of letters and numbers. And your technician, great technician, not 100% sure which one is actually the serial number against that part or component. Whereas if you take a picture, you have that safety net. You have all of those letters and numbers. So even if the manufacturer says, nope, this is a invalid or not a valid component serial number, you still have that safety net of, well, I have every number that's associated with this part or component. So again, this is something that is not mandated across the board, but within the near future, I would say, rather than later, because there is such a push by those other stakeholders at the OEM and the manufacturer level, as far as needing this information, or at least wanting this information, it's being requested more and more every day. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of a big thing, and that's causal part numbers. So regardless of who the manufacturer is, for the most part, any claim that's filed, you need to identify what a causal part number is associated with that failure. So the causal part number, as I mentioned whenever we were talking about the write-ups of the work orders themselves, in the cause section, I mentioned about many situations of a part number or part description being referenced and nothing else. And I said, that's still good information, Causal part number is the reason for that. So basically, you're identifying that part or component that actually caused the failure in such a state that a repair needed to be completed. Boiled down, that's what it's looking at. But with that being said, there are many situations and many cases in which the causal part number is referenced incorrectly. So, prime example, going back to that engine example that I referenced earlier. All right, you replace a complete engine assembly. That's great. But what actually caused that failure, we'll just say, is the camshaft. So even though the camshaft is not actually being replaced, you're replacing that higher assembly of being the complete engine, that's perfectly fine. But the causal part number should still reference that part or component, in this example, the camshaft, as being that specific cause of the failure. So that's something that I understand a lot of people. I won't just solely blame it on technicians or anybody specifically, but a lot of people have trouble wrapping their head around. Why would I reference a part number that isn't on the material list for this repair? Because again, the manufacturer wants to know specifically what caused that failure. Whether it comes to those early field failure guys, they want to see, hey, we have a situation whenever it comes to the camshafts. They want to know specifically it's a camshaft concern that needs to be addressed. If everything comes through as engine, that's not finite enough for them as far as specifically what's going on in the market and with their products. So that's why there is often a pushback as far as, hey, what's the causal part number? Additionally, at a part number level, be aware of supersessions and reman part numbers. If you have a piece of equipment that was just sold, we'll say 2 weeks ago. All right, brand new machine. Everything's looking good on it. Paint still isn't scuffed. It is awesome. But you have a hydraulic pump fail. All right, it happens. No big deal. You go out, you complete the repair, you replace it with a reman hydraulic pump. Again, no big deal or anything like that. The causal part number would not be a reman hydraulic pump. It would be that factory fitted or that genuine part number. Because the causal part number, again, needs to identify specifically at a part number level what caused the failure on the machine. So I do stress, be aware of supersession, be aware of those reman part numbers. Another thing is, whenever it comes to some of these repairs, the causal part number may be on your material list, but it's not the most expensive thing on the material list for that repair. That's perfectly fine. Again, as long as you're identifying and highlighting specifically what part caused that failure, again, at a part number level, you'll be good to go. Now, some of the last things I like to say about causal part numbers that might sound a little funny, but I've seen, again, a decent amount of claims and work orders that I feel confident that I should bring this up. Make sure the causal part number that's being referenced is a OEM part number. If you get something locally sourced, which may be fine depending on the manufacturer and their agreement, do not reference the cause of the failure being a non-genuine or non-OEM part number. Because if that claim is submitted, they'll look at that claim and basically say, no, thank you. Because they want to be able to warrant their parts of material. They have no say as far as anybody else's material and parts. Another thing that I want to mention about causal part numbers, make sure that the causal part number that is being referenced, again, pause for dramatic effect, is eligible for warranty. The example that I throw out here, fuses. So you may have a repair, and at the end of the repair, right up, you identify the cause of the failure was a fuse. Well, in many situations, many manufacturers and OEMs, they'll look at that claim and again say, no, thank you. Simply because the majority of them have fuses listed as a consumable, a wear and tear item, or even a maintenance item. As such, that's typically set aside as a limitation and not a non-eligible part or component for warranty. So again, this is kind of long-winded about the causal part numbers, but trust me whenever I say causal part numbers aren't always as easy or referenced correctly whenever it comes to repairs that are being completed. But again, it's very important, and it is something that is mandatory for the majority of claims that are ever submitted by any manufacturer. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about on the documentation side Parts warranties. So parts warranties, everybody has their thoughts as far as parts warranty works. For the most part, parts warranties are against original customer participation. So typically, and again, some manufacturers vary with this, but typically, parts warranty is against a piece of equipment that has no form of warranty or even extended coverage available on it, in which the customer buys that part or component. That part or component fails within the quote unquote part warranty time frame against that component, not the piece of equipment, but the component itself. And at that point, you may be eligible to be filing a parts warranty claim. But as silly as this sounds, there are many situations in which people look and they say, yep, this should be parts warranties, but you don't have any information about the original customer participation, whether it's a over-the-counter parts sale or if it was a, hey, can you come replace this for me? So you would have a work order in that situation and instance. There are many situations in which the information is not available or the invoice doesn't have enough to justify a parts warranty claim. So please make sure that whenever it comes to parts warranties, and I know that we have a lot of service personnel on this call, along with some parts people as well. So please make sure that whenever it comes to parts warranty claims that you are providing and making available the original customer participation, whether it's a over-the-counter parts sale invoice, or even if it's a work order that's billed specifically and directly to the customer. A couple things that are often missed on these invoices and work orders that's necessary for a warranty claim to be filed: machine information, purchase dates. Did they buy just the part, or was labor included in it? Because depending on the manufacturer, you may be eligible for just parts reimbursement, or you may be eligible for parts reimbursement and labor as well. So I'm not going to say that parts warranty is something that falls through all the time, but I do see a lot of dealers and different departments within dealerships struggle with parts warranty. So best I can give you is make sure that you are providing information about the original customer participation, whether it's that invoice or that work order, and make sure that there's as much information as possible. Again, machine information, hours, so on and so forth. That way you're able to secure that it does fall within the parameters and limitations for that parts warranty. All right, this is a big one. Dealer OEM communication. So every dealer is different. Every manufacturer is different, but typically there is some form of dialogue or back and forth. Whether it is a manufacturer that has the technical support avenue, whether it's like a THD, a chain case, tech line, so on and so forth, where you can actually submit a ticket for a specific failure, whether you're asking for technical support or authorization or anything along those lines, that's great. Make sure that that is being referenced. But there are many situations in which there is a communication with a rep or some form of management or somebody with authority at the OEM and manufacturer level. Jim's somebody that I made up. Jim's a great guy. He's a rep for a manufacturer. He always tries to do best by the customer, do best by the dealership. He's a great guy. You have a specific failure. It's kind of excessive. It's kind of elaborate. So you get Jim involved. You explain what's going on to Jim. Jim says, hey, I see exactly what you're talking about. I tell you what, why don't you do this, this, and this? I'll approve it, file it through warranty. All right, that's fine. But if the only thing is a comment in the work order that, hey, talk to Jim. Jim said that everything's fine that we did. That's typically not enough. Because even if the claim is filed and you make that notation that Jim said everything's A-okay as far as what you did for that specific repair, whoever's evaluating and adjudicating that claim and the manufacturer, they may not know who Jim is. They may contact Jim and say, hey, what exactly did you agree upon for this repair? Jim may have had 87 different things going on that day, and he can't quite remember specifically what he agreed upon. So it is very, very important that anytime there is any form of discussion or agreement or approval between the dealership and the OEM, make sure that there is a paper trail. I'm not a big fan of pointing fingers, but in situations like this, you want to protect yourself as much as possible. If Jim told you to do X, Y, Z, and you want to get reimbursed for XYZ, whether it's actions towards the labor or material, then it needs to be properly documented. More and more, this is handled through those technical support cases or through emails, both of which are decent avenues to document exactly what agreements and conversations were. But there are situations in which it's just done over the phone. Hey, I understand what's going on with, this customer. I'm willing to approve XYZ. That's great. You as a dealership think awesome. No big deal. We're ready to rock and roll. But if it's just a phone call, then that's very hard to support and document. Again, not saying that Jim's going to try to turn the wrenches on you or anything like that, but if it's not in writing, it's very hard to enforce. So even if it is an agreement that is done over the phone, I always do highly recommend make sure there is some form of follow-up that is in writing, whether it's an email or something along those lines. That way you are covered as far as why you did what you did, why you replaced what you did at a material and a labor level. Because the last thing you want is to think that everything is hunky-dory. Jim said that everything will be covered and be taken care of. Whenever in the end, if it's not documented properly, you may be on the hook for either part or even the entire repair. So communication between the dealership and the OEM not only is important, but it is very important that it is being documented as well. All right, one of the last things I want to touch on, warranty versus customer bill. So I saved this for the end because I didn't want to throw it out too early. So a lot of the information that I just went through was specific towards warranty claims and the information that's necessary and what the OEM and manufacturers are looking for whenever it comes to failures and repairs and actions and so on and so forth. A lot of people view warranty work orders as being handled one way and customer bill work orders being handled a different way. In my strong opinion, and all my years of experience, they should be handled basically the same. Now, the reason I say that is you may have a customer that they'll pay anything. It broke, you fixed it. They don't really care what you had to do. They're willing to write that check and get you paid for that work that was done. But on the flip side, you may have customers in which, well, you sent me this invoice and this bill. Why am I paying this much? That seems excessive, whatever the situation and case might be. If you just have a technician that wrote down broke fix for customer bills, how are you going to justify that to the customer as far as, yes, this is all valid at the material level, at the labor level, at shop supplies, whatever you're billing them for? It is important to be detailed, not just on the warranty side, but on the customer bill as well. But another thing that I do like to highlight whenever I talk about warranty work orders versus customer bill work orders, there are many situations, believe it or not, in which a repair is conducted and you think, hey, this is customer bill, no big deal, broke fix, he'll pay it, it's no big deal, no sweat off the brow. When in actuality, with a little bit of research, you realize this is actually a warranty claim or it's handled through extended coverage. So in those situations, broke fix, again, typically does not fly anymore with these manufacturers and the OEMs. So if all you did was say that it broke fixed, thinking that it was going to be a customer bill, but it ends up being a warranty or extended coverage, at that point, how can you justify the labor, the material, that it is even eligible as a defective material and or workmanship? Cannot stress it enough. Handle warranty work orders, customer bill work orders, the exact same. That way, on the technician level, you don't have that divide on, hey, I need to provide for this, I don't need to provide for that. If you get everybody in the same rotation and the same mindset as far as, hey, regardless if it is customer bill or warranty, I'm going to get the same information from the get-go. Then at that point, again, you're setting yourself up for success, because the last thing you want is a situation where the technician thought, this isn't warranty, so broke fix. We need to work past just the broke fix scenario, because the manufacturers are starting to mandate and dictate much more beyond broken fix. All right, just a couple key notes before I wrap up and we do the Q&A. First of which, whenever it comes to warranty and information, be aware of what the OEM and manufacturers, where their stance is. A lot of them are becoming quote unquote technology companies. They want that additional information. They have those other stakeholders, early field failure, parts engineering, yada, 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 that want that detailed information. Beyond just what the monetary reimbursement should be, they want the technical information and the detailed information. Also, make sure that your technicians are being as detailed as possible whenever it comes to their write-ups. Make sure that everything is justified. If you have 2 hours into that repair, make sure that the write-up supports it. If you have 100 hours into that repair, make sure that write-up supports it. Make sure that everything is justified, not just on the labor side, but also on the material or any other costs associated with that repair. Fault code, error codes, again, I get it. Old days, straight pipes, we're long past that. Everything has some form of computer on it. The last thing you want is a claim to be adjusted or denied simply because that fault code, error code isn't being provided. If you have that capability of doing a data download or matrice reading or something of the sort, definitely make sure that that's being completed and making sure that that's being made available for that warranty claim to be submitted. Fuel and oil samples, every manufacturer is a little bit different as far as when it's needed, when it's not needed, whether or not they will reimbursement. But if a fuel or oil sample is being completed, again, make sure that that documentation and that information is made available. Pictures, again, I kind of have to step back a little bit because I could talk about pictures forever. Make sure that your technicians have an avenue to take pictures. Pictures are great. Devin's a big fan of pictures. Make sure they have an avenue to take pictures. Make sure that they are taking pictures. Pictures of the failure, pictures of the failed parts components, pictures of anything with a number, anywhere from the operating hours that are either analog on a reader or on the instrument cluster or the dash, pictures of those component serial numbers, pictures. Cost nothing, takes mere moments. Also be aware that those component serial numbers is something that's being requested, if not required, more and more by manufacturers. Again, it's not across the board yet, but I would say in the near future, there's going to be a stronger push for the serial numbers at a component level. Causal part numbers, again, there's typically too much confusion as far as what should be listed as a causal part number. Boil down what part or component actually caused that failure at a part number level. And then, of course, any supporting documentation. If you have a communication with the manufacturer or the OEM, make sure that you have that documented. If you had a complication whenever it came to this repair, make sure that it's being noted down. I promise you, manufacturers don't really get too upset if you provide them too much information or too much justification. Typically, it's the other way around. They want more information. They want better justification. They want those details, whether it is the warranty team at the manufacturer themselves, or even if it's one of those other stakeholders. Well, I'm under the time. At this moment, that is the end. I will open it up for the Q&A. If anybody has any questions, concerns, if you just want to say that, Devin, you did a great job, I do accept those as well.
Devin, you did do a great job. And we got a flurry of questions kind of right at the end. So I'm not sure if we'll get to all of them, but we'll see what we can do. All right. So first question, if there is a discrepancy between the customer's opinion versus the dealer's experience and OEM guidelines say it's non-warranty, should we still try and submit claim to show customer denial? Problem is, if it's automatically approved and then changed back later, it becomes a mess.
Okay. So in this situation, you may come across, I'm sure many of you have come across, where the customer says this absolutely should be warranty. And you want to go down the avenue of, hey, if I submit this claim, it'll be rejected. At that point, I have quote unquote proof that this claim is not eligible for warranty. Now, with the manufacturers, there are some situations in which claims may slide through, whether they have certain thresholds or systematic safeguards that either aren't met or triggered by you submitting that claim. So it can become a mess. If you file that claim, it gets approved. So obviously you don't have a situation as far as, hey, I have a denial, Mr. Customer, this is not eligible for warranty. Now you have the situation where it looks like, customer, you were right, this is eligible for warranty and we got paid for warranty. In those situations, I do strongly recommend having a conversation with the OEM or manufacturer. Again, it's not a situation where you're trying to tattle on yourself or anything like that. You want to be as compliant as possible. And due to some, again, safeguards that are not met at the manufacturing level, that claim may slide through and get approved. The worst case scenario, they'll come back and they'll say, yep, it is eligible for warranty, which I do understand might leave a little bit of egg on your face, but that's actually a pretty decent situation to be sitting in, where not only is it eligible for warranty, you have confirmation by the manufacturer OEM, and at that point the customer is happy and tickled because they got it approved and it's not billed, it's not going to them. So I understand that can be tricky, but in a nutshell, if you run in that situation, I would have that conversation with the OEM or manufacturer.
All right. Next question. How do we get paid for time spent on the phone with tech support, for example, in lieu of OEM workshop manual lacking information or OEM requesting diagnostics, which may not be paid?
So every manufacturer is different. I always have to start with that because some of them do and some of them don't. A lot of manufacturers, they fall on the mindset of, hey, if we do a parts uplift or they have an incentive program that is set up in such a fashion that it's supposed to offset situations like that. But if you still feel like it is insufficient as far as the reimbursement, again, I have no say as far as, or I can't strong arm any manufacturers to pay more and more and more. If I could, I'd be in a different business, but I'm not going into that. But in those situations, you should have a rep for that manufacturer. If you run into a situation where you're doing your best, your technicians are doing their best, but you're waiting on responses or you get put on hold by that technical support case or whatever the situation might be, definitely make sure that it's still being noted and being logged. And at that point, even if it's not reimbursed through warranty, I would say try to exercise other avenues for reimbursement or compensation through typically the OEM rep.
All right, sorry. Oh, I don't think we're going to get to everyone's questions, but I will make sure I get the questions over to Devin. And Devin, if you have a couple minutes, maybe we go a little bit past 3. But
absolutely.
All right. So the next question: what is the average warranty reclaim rate? My dealership average is about 79% or so. So they get about 79% of parts and labor under warranty versus doing it as a normal customer paying job.
Okay, so that's a tough question simply because every manufacturer is different as far as what their reimbursement level is. I know a lot of people, they just want to be made whole. So I do understand that, between 70 to 90% may be good, may not be good. Everybody wants to be at that 100 plus for the recovery rate. But again, every manufacturer is different as far as their level of reimbursement, if they have any incentive programs or anything like that. But the closest way, again, that I can stress to get to that 100% or being made quote unquote whole is providing as much information as possible. If you identify that, yes, their labor was excessive, but we can justify and we can identify why labor was excessive, then at that point, that's the best avenue you can go. Again, I feel like I'm going to kind of rat out a bunch of reps here, but if you run into a situation where you feel that things are not being handled properly as far as the reimbursement levels, contact your rep. They may be able to either provide you further guidance or may be able to assist with any form of monetary reimbursement. Again, I'm not guaranteeing anything, but those are the best avenues.
Okay. Next question. If we bill a customer 3 hours for a job, then do the same job under warranty in 2.5 hours, we're not allowed to bump the warranty time to customer pricing by the manufacturer. Do you know why that is?
Can you read that again?
If we bill a customer 3 hours for a job, then do the same job under warranty in 2.5 hours, we're not allowed to bump the warranty time to customer pricing by the manufacturer. Why?
Okay, so I think I understand the question. So 3 hours for customer bill, but warranty, they only reimburse 2.5. That's kind of how I'm viewing this at the moment. You can't bump it up to the 3 hours, whether it's a turbocharger, whatever the case might be. They have those SRTs or those time guides that say, hey, we're only going to reimburse 2.5 hours versus that is 3 hours, even though you have actual repair time of 3 hours, which of course can be billed at customer bill. But whenever it comes to warranty claims, you're only able to file for that 2.5 hours. Again, do like to stress back on the information that's provided. If you run into any complications, diagnostics, or anything that took additional time beyond those time guides or those SRT amounts, definitely make sure that it's noted. And I do strongly push to fight for that additional time. The worst they can say is no. But if you create a presence and you say that, hey, yes, it should be, in this example, 3 hours, because X, Y, Z, and you have it detailed out as much as possible, then that's the best avenue that you can go.
Okay. And then this will probably be our last question. There are some still sitting, but I will, for those whose questions are not getting answered, I will share these with Devin so that he can reach out to you separately. Okay. Last question. How are manufacturers handling the parts warranty? Do they go state by state as far as amount to pay the dealer, or do they set their policy? Example, they pay cost plus 30% or strictly list price, cost plus 15, or vary percentages per state policy.
So that's several facets of a question. First of which, typically manufacturers come up with a specific on, yes, we will reimburse at X, Y, Z, whether it is a percentage or cost or list or whatever the situation that they have dedicated out. There are situations that there are some, I should say, local legislation at the state level, typically, where they need to be reimbursed at X amount of rates, whether it is the manufacturer says, hey, we'll reimburse DNet plus 5%. Again, try to use easy math. Whereas the local law or legislation for that state or that territory identifies, no, you need to reimburse that list in those situations. So it does vary. There are avenues that you can get that information, but I won't dive into the specifics of which state and which legislation or anything like that in this forum. But there are situations that you may not be aware of in which local law does actually come in whenever it comes to the reimbursement, especially at a part reimbursement level.
Okay. Well, with that, since we did go a little bit past 3 o'clock, we are going to wrap things up. Like I said earlier, today's presentation will be available on the Farm Equipment website in the event you'd like to go back and review it, or would like to make sure anyone else at the dealership watches it. We should have that replay out to you within 48 hours. On behalf of Devin, the Warranty Consulting Services team, and the Farm Equipment staff, thanks for joining us for today's webinar. Feel free to reach out to me for any topics you'd like to see us cover in future webinars. And with that, have a good rest of your day.
Thanks again for the time.
Thank you.